Okay, good evening, fellow councillors. It's nice to be back, but we'll see after the meeting's finished whether I say the same, whether I want to come back again. I will just say that it is quite a longish agenda, and there are some items on here that have been carried over from previous meetings. So I'd like to hope that we get everything done. So that's what I shall be looking for. Before we actually start the meeting properly, I'd just like to inform members, who probably know, of the sad death of former councillor for Brailsford, Councillor Carol Valentine. She previously had been working as a British counsel in New York and Hong Kong, and was a much respected member of this authority. And what have you. So, yeah. Apparently, funeral details is the 7th of Feb at Mark Eaton. But obviously, if you want to contact myself or Councillor Rose, if you want to. I'm going to open to the floor to the group leaders who knew Carol, if they wish to make any comments. So I'll start with Councillor Purdy. Sorry, you would like to do a minute silent first? Okay, we'll do the minute silent first. If you'd like to stand, thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. I mean, I was shocked when Councillor Janet Rose informed me only the other day about the sad loss of Carol. Quite a shock, because last year I saw her, she seemed quite well. She, as said by the Chair, was a very well-respected lady and a real good councillor for this authority. I will do my best to get to the service at Mark Eaton, and I'm sure other group leaders who knew Carol would like to say some words. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Flitter.
Yes, well, thank you, Chair. It's caught us on the hop a little bit, that has. Very sad news indeed. And yes, she was a well-respected councillor on this authority. She was a councillor that was a Conservative, a true Conservative. I didn't hold that against her. But she was one that also liked to joke. And we shared many a time on the coach, on planning committees, sharing jokes and discussions, and I found her a very interesting lady in the work that she'd done elsewhere, as well as on this council. I missed her when she didn't come back onto this council. She was somebody that had her own mind, and she did change tact on odd occasions, of which I do admire when people are listening to debate and seeing the other side of the story. And it is a great shock, and I hope that this council have sent their condolences to the family. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This has certainly come as a shock, very unexpected, I have to say, and I treat it with great sadness. The death of any woman, or indeed man, as the saying goes, diminishes us all. But the passing of Councillor Valentine sees yet another step that removes us from a council that I remember very fondly, and it was one that has been said had a great harmony about it, and Carol was very much to the front of that in always willing to share and to have discussion and conversation with opposition members. I send out my condolences to her family and relatives, and as I say, it's a very sad occasion that we're having to now reflect on her past life. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you. Obviously, Carol worked very closely with my late husband Lewis, but I knew Carol more in her social role. She was lovely. She was very, very sensible, and I'm very, very pleased that she was our friend. She'd only been ill since November when she broke her hip. And then on a sort of a more humorous way, I always used to say to Carol, I was very, very envious of her because she had perfect skin. And I don't really know how she did it, but she was a lovely person, and, and all of her friends will miss her. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors who knew Councillor Valentine that wish to make any condolences to the family? Councillor Slack, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Carol was a very sociable person. When we used to go out on the planning bus, she would always have a joke and a smile, and she was a really nice person. And on planning committee, she would look at a planning application and her views, and she would sometimes go against other views. So she was a person with her own mind, and I think she was a very good councillor indeed for Brailsford. So she will be missed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll start the meeting. So we go to item 1, apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillors Bright, Chapman, Cruz, Fitzherbert, Finesse, Councillor Gretrix, Councillor Mrs Morley, Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Wayne.
Okay, thank you. Now we go moving to public participation. I'll find my speakers list in a minute. First, I would like to call upon James Archer, member of the Squash Club. Can I just say that you've got 3 minutes? Thank you. Is that where they're set up to sit? Yeah. Yes, thank you. Can't see that far.
Good evening, my name is James Archer. I live in the district. I'm a committee member of Ashbourne Squash Club, an active squash player at both club and county level, and a squash coach in Ashbourne. As a result of several years of hard work by our committee, we've successfully attracted new members to the game of squash with the help and support of England Squash. We encourage all members of the public, from children to senior persons, to play the game with regular squash events. The health benefits are quite clear. An active internal league exists and annual club championships take place. In addition, the club has strong participation in Derbyshire leagues, thus playing at several other clubs in the county. Consequently, we are only too aware of the poor state of our courts by comparison. The Council's decision at the last meeting on the 24th of November was to grant large sums of public money to Freedom Leisure. to aid them with the increased energy costs, which were warmly welcomed by all squash members. Due to the overrun of the replacement boiler, there's been no background heating in the leisure centre over the past 6 months. This was compounded by the Freedom Leisure national position not to turn on the heating, apart from the swimming pool. The damp conditions have caused the wooden floor on one squash court to warp, thus becoming unsafe, and soon the court will be unusable if not addressed. We have had to agree to play some county club matches at other clubs due to complaints by those teams. The cold conditions have also meant the courts are well below the minimum 15 degrees recommended by England Squash, and this can result in a higher likelihood of injuries. Temperatures as low as 8 degrees are regularly experienced by us over the last 6 months. Following complaints, the overhead court heaters, which are known as ambirads, have been turned on occasionally, but unfortunately this transpired that they were not serviceable initially. It's taken months to have them sorted out, and this is all down to a lack of maintenance. Nor do Freedom Leisure staff seem to know how to operate these heaters on numerous occasions. It's taken months to finally get them functioning, but they don't heat the court sufficiently, as they're only on when requested during the time that we're on the squash court. The courts were refurbished in 2019 at great expense. The day-to-day sweeping of the courts to ensure the floors are not slippery is highly inconsistent, with repeated requests being required for court cleaning. This basic housekeeping should be routine. And finally, the dry side changing and shower areas are in a poor state, and they haven't been improved for over 10 years. We continually get complaints from members and visiting teams. The court fees are £10.20 for 40 minutes. This is extremely expensive when compared to any other leisure centre that I've been to in the UK. There are discounts available for gym members, free off-peak and reduced peak, but not for squash club members. Overall, we're concerned that the cost of playing is not good value for money given the standard of the facilities.
Mr. Archer, I'm going to have to stop you there. Sorry, you have your three minutes. Thank you.
Can I conclude, please? It will take 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, councillors, that Freedom Leisure's lack of attention and poor stewardship of your council building has now resulted in permanent damage? It will cost a great deal to fix. The lack of heating, maintenance and poor value for money shows the callous disregard Freedom Leisure has for the benefits of the leisure centre. Can I ask you, therefore, please, to use your financial ability to force Freedom Leisure to react to this and actually use the money that they've been given to spend on heating? It hasn't been done so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Archer.
Chair,
I think we will take that up.
Would you permit me to respond? Thank you, Mr. Archer. Gary Prader, Leader of the Council. This is news to me. I'm sorry to hear it. I promise to take it up.
Is there anybody else? Is he here? I thought I got no. Mr. Hewitt. I thought I'd had an email. Is it saying that he wouldn't be here because he's right? Okay.
Motion, and Mr. Hewitt's comment was just to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's public speaking done. Members' interests. Has anybody got any interests they need to declare on any items? No? Okay, thank you. So item 4, leaders' announcements. Councillor Purdy, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, we have a star in our midst. No, it's not me. It's Tommy Shaw. Seems a bit perverse is that to hand over his prize to me, but I thought it absolutely appropriate that these members here take note of what we've got in our midst. So Tommy was recently awarded the Rookie of the Year 2022 award for the Association of Democratic Services, ADSO. ADSO is the nationally recognised association for for those working in local authority, democratic and governance services, which represents, promotes and develops excellent democratic services for the benefit of all those working within local government. Tommy joined the council in 2021 under a temporary contract to support the elections team and has developed quickly. Following the restructure of the democratic services last year, he was appointed as democratic services team leader. Tommy, there are many words on this paper, kindly supplied by your boss, James, and he's given me permission to hand it over to you for posterity. It is great pleasure, therefore, that I ask you to come forward for the presentation and a photograph to be taken by Jim. I'm sure that members will join me in congratulating you on this excellent achievement.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And now, last part of the leader's announcement, Year of Little Faith. It is not strange that many others, such as chief execs and senior officers, have complete faith in the leadership of this authority, which can be testified to in many areas, such as Vision Derbyshire, other local authorities and outside bodies. First, let me remind you what the Independent Peer Challenge Review report said in October 2019 about our authority at 4.2, Leadership of Place. DDDC is credited with being an effective leader of the district by partners who attest to the authority being a good partner to work with, which makes positive contributions to collaboration. Relationships with partner organisations to promote the district are strong. The council is actively looking to work more closely with other districts. And now, ministers in government have recognised the leadership qualities at this authority and the community teamwork completed on Ashbourne Reborn by the granting of the first and largest grant of monies that this rural authority has achieved, in the sum of £13.5 million from the Levelling Up Fund from government and made up to £15 million by match funding. If it had not been for my leadership in 2019 after my council in Ashbourne, especially Councillor Stuart Lee's related to me the concern of the traders in Ashbourne regarding the loss of high street shops, we would not be celebrating this fantastic win. And if you don't want to believe me, then please speak to the key stakeholders in Ashbourne. I wish to place on record our sincere thanks and congratulations to the Ashbourne Reborn team, consisting of officers from this authority, like Paul, Steve and Giles, officers from Derbyshire County Council, the significant amount of monies supported from both authorities, but also by members of Ashbourne Town team, especially Anne Wright, Norman Harris, Ashbourne Town Council, Ascom and Tony from the Ashbourne Methodist Church. The bid has been supported by the District Council's expert consultant Michael Rich, Bentley Project Management and Latham's Architects. This successful bid was achieved by community teamwork and is a prime example to all our other market towns and large villages in Derbyshire Dales as to what can be achieved when the community comes together. Please note that a third tranche of LUF monies is expected to be announced soon by government, and I would hope that we can submit another bid. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy. Item 5, the Chairman's announcements. So, Councillor Elliott, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got 4 items I want to mention. On the 28th of November, I attended the Morley Hayes Conference Centre at Ilkeston to represent Derbyshire Dales at a British Empire Medal Award ceremony. The event and presentation by the Lord Lieutenant took place in the Mill Room and was hosted by our Chief Executive and Clerk to the Lieutenancy, Paul Wilson. A total of 5 medals were presented, and one of the recipients lives within our Derbyshire Dales district. The High Sheriff and other dignitaries from around the area also attended that. On the 15th of December, I attended the Matlock Festive Fuddle at the Imperial Rooms in Matlock. This was a bit of a get-together organised by the Environment Agency to provide an update on progress with regard to the flood wall defences and to be introduced to a new management team that's taken over the flood defences. And on the 18th of December, both Jen and myself were invited to the British Legion Ex-Servicemen's Club in Ashbourne. The event was organised and hosted by Councillor Stuart Lees, who is a key mover and shaker in the Ashbourne branch. And following a carvery lunch for about 50, I presented long service certificates to Ashbourne poppy collectors, some of whom had 50 years service under their belts. A fantastic achievement and an honour for me as Derbyshire Dale Civic Chairman to make that presentation. And during the event, a raffle was held and all proceeds, which was a substantial amount of cash, was given to me by Councillor Leeds towards my charity. It was an enjoyable afternoon with some of our ex-servicemen and their families. Thank you, Councillor Leeds. Last Thursday, I attended the Bowling Green pub in Winster. The event was to present the MBE to Mr. John Mills. The presentation would normally have been carried out at the Palace, but due to his failing health, was held locally in the pub across the road. Again, the event was hosted by Paul Wilson and the presentation was carried out by the Lord Lieutenant. The event was also attended by a ward member, Councillor Colin Swindle, and some of John's family and friends. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 6, to receive the non-exempt minutes from the committees below, which are the Ernest Bailey Committee from the 17th of the 11th, 22, the Governance and Resource Committee from the 22nd of the 11th, 22, the Council from the 24th of the 11th, 22, Community Environment Committee on the 7th of the 12th, and Planning Committee on the 13th of the 12th. Can I propose that we accept these minutes? Councillor Donnelly and Councillor Shirley. All those in favour, please, Joe? Unanimous, thank you. Item 7, questions. I believe we have questions from Councillor Gamble. So the floor is yours, Councillor Gamble. Thank you.
Sorry, do you want me to read my questions out or something then? Or? I mean, I've got the written question here with the written answer. I know no one else has got it, but is that what you're expecting? No one said what I should expect me to do.
Sorry, Councillor
What do you
Gamble.
want me to do?
Obviously, I don't know whether everybody has got the questions in front.
No, they haven't.
And so rather than Councillor Purdy just giving the answers to it, then I will give you the opportunity to read out your questions and then take the response from Councillor Purdy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, question 1. Has the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group found temporary tolerator stopping places in addition to Derwent Way in Matlock and the station car park in Matlock Bath? Please name any places that have been assessed and any places that are due to be assessed. Do you want me to read all 3 out?
Councillor Purdy? No, we'll do one at a time.
All right, thank you.
I think it's best to respond to each question individually. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, the sites assessed were referred to in the report that was considered by the Council at its meeting on 24th of November 2022. I don't intend to repeat them all here. With regard to any places due to be considered as temporary sites, these are not in the ownership of the Council and are subject to commercial negotiation presently, and I'm advised that I cannot name these in a public meeting at this time. I would hope that this information will be made public when the Gypsy and Traveller Site Provision Working Group submits its next report to Council.
Do I get my supplementary?
Do you have a supplementary question for that
I do,
one?
please. Yeah, if I can just say, because obviously the issue really was, we were only coming up with 2 last time. They gave a date of the 31st of January. Have any assurances made to the Heights of Abraham that the 31st of January now will still stick and there will be somewhere else to move the travellers to?
Well, that's your second question, so do you want me to answer that?
Well, not. No, the second question was about the personal warranties, guarantees, not the date.
There's been no promises made to Heights of Abraham.
I've seen the emails. I know you have.
There's been no promises made to Heights of Abraham.
Do you want me to read the email from Paul Wilson?
Okay. So the supplementary question is carrying on from your question of are there other names of places to be put? And as Councillor Purdy has answered, no. So your question as regards the date, are you just asking, are they actually
It was about
leaving?
the date and whether any assurances are now made to the Heights of Abraham that the date that came up at the last meeting of the 31st of January will be adhered to. Has any more sites come up with to enable you to do that?
No, as I said in the earlier
No.
answer.
Okay. You said that you got a couple of sites that you won't
Okay,
give up
right.
in a public meeting.
Sorry,
Can I have them privately?
That's another question. So
Right,
are we omitting one of the questions that you've already put forward? Can we keep it to what we are asking questions upon?
All right.
Thank you.
Question 2. It has come to my attention that a business in my ownership has been used in a matrix to assess a site as a temporary tolerator stopping place without my knowledge. Can you explain how the Heights of Abraham got personal guarantees from the leader of the council and the chief executive that the council would only use a site in the council's ownership until the 31st of January 2023? And this is a repeat of my other question. How confident are you that date will be adhered to?
The Heights of Abraham did not get personal guarantees either from myself or the Chief Executive. Council agreed to the recommendation from the Gypsum Traveller Site Provision Working Group that the Matlock Bath Station Yard car park should be designated as a temporary site until 31 January 2023. This confirmed an earlier urgent decision which was taken by the Director of Corporate and Customer Services following consultation with the working group, political group leaders from all groups, and receiving the necessary consent from the Vice Chairman of the Council and me as Leader of the Council. As we are now at 26 January and the cross-party working group has not yet delivered any further recommendations, I am disappointed to advise that the Council will not be able to require the specific traveller family to move from Matlock Bath Station Yard car park by 31 January 2023. It is imperative that alternative sites are identified and agreed at the earliest opportunity.
My supplementary?
Supplementary.
Right, okay. If this issue wasn't a personal thing between you and the Heights of Abraham, can you confirm to me, please, when they wrote to you on the 5th of October 2022, what email address did they use to your email? It wasn't your council one because your council one wouldn't have been redacted. Which email address did they write to you in?
I've got correspondence in my personal email between myself and Heights of Abraham at least one occasion before Christmas.
Okay, so they did use your personal address, email, thank you. Right, third question. The matrix used by the Gypsy and Travellers Site Provision Working Group was based on analysis of potential sites against Planning Policy HC6, which I'm reading your answer out, sorry. Are the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group still using the matrix to assess potential sites? And if they are not using the matrix, on what date did they stop using it? And what process are they now using to assess sites? Sorry about that.
The matrix used by the Gypsum Traveller Site Provision Working Group was based on analysis of potential sites against Planning Policy HC6, which specifically relates to the delivery of permanent traveller sites. The last discussion in relation to the matrix at the working group was on 2nd of November 2022. However, I can confirm that all sites that remain under consideration were previously assessed against Planning Policy HC6. It is a matter for the working group to determine whether they wish to seek advice and analysis from planning policy officers in respect of any other sites that may come under consideration.
My supplementary is, again, looking at the email correspondence, it was evident that all councillors were asked to mark various sites out of 0, 5 or 10. Could I have access, please, to those scores that were given by the councillors for the sites?
Chair, I don't feel I'm in a position to answer that.
If you're leader of council, if you're not, who is?
I'm leading this over to James.
Thanks, Chair. As Data Protection Officer, you're aware, members, that if the Council holds the relevant data and it doesn't contain information that can't be shared, then that can be provided, if it exists.
It must exist. There's emails inviting it.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just making the point if it exists.
Yeah. Obviously, I don't want personalised information, just the scores. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 8, proposal of a motion from Councillor Matt Butler. So, Matt, thank you.
Is that good? Colleagues, firstly, I'd like to thank Steve Capes for a useful overview to me of the work that we're now doing as a council. Thank you, Steve. I want to talk to you all about nature and what it means for us, the communities that we represent, the implications of some upcoming legislation, and how we can make the most of that legislation for our residents. Following on from conversations that I've been having with Councillor Purdy, I'd like to explain why we should be supporting this motion now and provide an overview of what we are already doing for biodiversity. In a 2008 review, the County Council Biodiversity Officer concluded that this District Council takes biodiversity into consideration within the majority of its services. However, as we are all aware, since then, 13 years of austerity has cut central funding to local councils by 50%, and our staff have borne the brunt of that, and the number of biodiversity responsibilities that all public policies have has increased. However, despite the cuts, positive initiatives, including our improvement of road verges and public open spaces, continued, and we are working with Natural England in the Wye Valley on a nationally significant nature recovery pilot, expanding our road verge work, and are likely to be a pilot authority for the County Council's forthcoming biodiverse road verge strategy proposals. When the last Community and Environment Committee meeting unanimously approved our officers' work on roadsides and open spaces, the praise was well deserved. We manage various sites of special scientific interest in-house. Our management of the local nature reserve at Hightor Grounds, Pictor and Lovers Walks in Matlock is having a positive impact on important sites for nature and people. Our local plan from 2017 has a section on biodiversity and green infrastructure, which is the open spaces, both privately and publicly owned, which provides benefits for our residents, such as natural flood management, places to pursue active travel, such as walking or cycling, and carbon sequestration. As a result, my colleagues at the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust can work closely with our planning team to ensure that planning cases are compliant with the law on protected species and the National Planning Policy Framework is adhered to. But things are due to change again, and for the better. In November 2021, the Environment Act was passed. The 25-year Environment Plan was a response to the 2019 Dasgupta Review on the Economics of Biodiversity. Professor Dasgupta made it clear that we need nature for us to survive. And the bad news is that at the moment, across the world, we are burning through our natural capital like spendthrift fools. The Environment Act will, from November 2023, put in place a mandatory requirement for a measurable 10% increase in biodiversity for every non-domestic development, including public infrastructure projects across the UK. So that's from November the 1st, 2023. The Environment Act requires each county to have a local nature recovery strategy, and it will have regulatory significance. And that is where this motion to council comes in. This is a process that we want to be proactively part of. Derbyshire County Council look to be taking the lead on Derbyshire's local nature recovery strategy, and the National Park Authority are currently preparing a version of it for the Peak District. Their priorities will be county-wide or national park-wide priorities. It's our job to make sure that they know and we know what we need here in the Derbyshire Dales, particularly outside the National Park. Other district planning authorities across the county are developing plans which will feed into the county-wide plan, giving their residents and councillors a locally focused voice. Bolsover, South Derbyshire, Chesterfield, High Peak and Derby City have all done it. Local nature recovery plan submissions are also in preparation at Amber Valley and North East Derbyshire. Derbyshire Dales and Erewash are missing a trick here. These proposals support the county proposals but highlight locally important issues. It will cost us dear if we increases uncertainty for our developers too. Having a plan benefits residents, business and biodiversity. Derbyshire Dales takes pride in its desirability as somewhere to live, work and play. Without a coordinated local recovery strategy, we risk losing out to the areas that are ahead of us. Biodiversity benefits from joined up working. If we do this in good time, then the whole Derbyshire plan will benefit. The county's plan will work better for all if we do our part. Last week, Steve convened a meeting of those officers who are working on biodiversity to clarify what we are already doing, and again, thank you, Steve. This motion is fundamentally about consolidating that work, asking our team to ensure coordination of the work that we're already doing, maximising its impact, clearly identifying our priorities and maximising the benefits for our communities. Councillor Purdy suggested that this should wait until the next administration. I disagree because of the 1st of November deadline. I've brought these proposals to this meeting because we are conducting the local plan review and we need to be ready for biodiversity net gain in November. Biodiversity net gain is going to be a big part of our lives for the next 25 years. We should do this now, and thank you for your support.
Thank you. Councillor Burford. Mr.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd be delighted to second this excellent motion, actually. We're all fully aware that the world is facing an inextricably linked nature as well as climate crisis, with wildlife, especially many animal species, in terminal decline and possible extinction. This motion asks us to develop a nature recovery strategy to underpin all decision-making, including planning decisions and the local plan, or the revision of the local plan, I should say. Most of these commitments do not require huge financial, even staff resources, but rather more perhaps a change of attitude and application. However, instead it's houses, houses, houses. Wherever we look around the edges of our towns and larger villages, and as for the 10% biodiversity net gain, that's often not the case, because while we usually insist on green space management regimes in Clause F to help maximise the effect of any soft landscaping, we appear unable to enforce such conditions, especially when delegated to a remote management company or housing association. The question is, I guess, what can this council do to try to halt the decline of nature? How can we act to reduce the risk of more frequent flooding? And there's been an example of that on Matlock Bank above Hurst Farm only the last few days. And actually begin to plant a huge number of trees that we pledged in our various plans, a climate change plan, I think, and start to contribute to the important landscape and wildlife corridors throughout the district. Can I ask if we have already adopted and put into practice, for example, a 100% peat-free policy in Clause H? I'm not sure how many public open space sites we actually own and manage, but an audit in GG would prove how effective we are at improving landscapes, which could become rich in biodiversity and potential carbon storage. The commitment in this challenging motion must be taken on board by this council, as many others have done already, in order to comply with our own climate change and biodiversity objectives. But words in excellent motions like this are not enough. Without tangible commitment and with the corporate staffing resources required, whether by redeploying an existing member of staff or employing a suitable person on, say, a contract, we will not succeed in fulfilling most of our environmental commitments. And I agree with Councillor Buckler that May or June in this year, following the election of a new council, is not soon enough. We've got to do it now. And so I urge you, therefore, to support Councillor Buckler's motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm sorry we've not had more time to discuss this, Councillor Buckler. It was very short notice, and particularly in view of the fact that I did ask for some bullet points from officers and didn't receive them. I'm trying to act on the hoof now, and I'm terribly disappointed to hear that Derbyshire Dales and Erewash are missing out. So my advice from Chief Exec was that it would be better to go into next year. It's not my advice, it's from the Chief Exec after the Chief Exec's meeting, 2 days ago? Given the fact that I started the ball rolling on climate change in this authority, I am very keen that it continues to roll. So I would hope that we can work part of what I was going to submit as an amendment. I'm going to support your motion, but I hope that you can agree that we should have the work reviewed and undertaken and brought back to this council as soon as possible. So my advice was not my advice was passed on advice. So I'm supporting you. We started the climate change in 2019, and it's important. I don't want to hear that Derbyshire Dales is missing out on this very important subject. So I think officers have some lessons to learn, and I think we need to get this thing rolling. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to make? Councillor Flitt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I can't speak with the expertise that Matt and Martin have spoken on. But I've read the report thoroughly, and I was concerned that there was going to be a block of not supporting this motion. I do really think that Matt has covered everything in this report. It doesn't place a great onus on this council, but we are. And we've taken pride over years of being a leading authority and taking the bull by the horn, so to speak. On this occasion, when it comes to biodiversity, I know we made a start. I would have liked the views of the two Conservative members that I really am impressed with on this issue, but they're not here. And I think we are going to miss an opportunity if we don't support this. I could not see a reason for actually delaying this until the next incumbents on this authority. And that is all. I think it's something that we've got to take on board, and we recognise that, you know, the work that's been put in to put this motion forward. And I hope everybody does support it, because it is important to this council and gives that for the next council that comes on a steer of what we want to achieve. Because although we have been doing, it's not quite enough, and we need to take this and the other environmental issues very seriously and embed them in all the policies that we do. So there's a theme going all the way through our policy making to make sure that we're doing the right thing in the right way. And as it's been said, it's not a great cost to this council. It's a little bit of forethought and a little bit of intuition, and we can achieve. Thank you.
Thank you for that. First, before I carry on, James, would you like to ask the question?
Yeah, Councillor Purley, can I just clarify whether you proposed an amendment?
My concern, Chair, is that I think a report should come back to Council. I think we need to have an agreed date on that, on what Mass is asking for. I think there needs to be a point in time. I hear the concern about this November date. I didn't know that. If I'd have been forewarned of that, other than hearing it from Councillor Buckley tonight, that's what sort of set me back a bit. So my point is, I'm happy to support Councillor Buckley's motion, but I ask the motion mover, do you consider with me that we ought to have an agreed date on which this report should come back?
So, Councillor Butler.
Sorry. Earliest opportunity.
So
the review has been asked to be undertaken. In other words, to encapsulate what we've done and to encapsulate what needs to be done.
So is that your alternative draft motion or my
If
in my
you can
motion?
include those words as a sentence, I'll be happy to support.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So as soon as possible, or do you want a date, Matt?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. Okay.
So added on to your motion is the fact that as soon as possible you can review what's already been done, what needs to be done.
Yep.
Is that's clarification for everybody within the council for this motion that's on the table? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Councillor Burford.
I was just going to say that I think probably a date would be more appropriate, really, because otherwise, as soon as possible, could be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever.
Chair, if I can be helpful, you've got one ordinary council meeting left before the 4th of May, so it will probably have to be that date on the 16th of March.
Okay. Right.
Okay, so we'll look at it as being the next full council that can be taken. Obviously, the one in the beginning of March is a budget meeting, so it won't be able to be taken at that meeting. Okay, thank you. Councillor Buttle. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, it's really good news that we're going to get something back for the next meeting. I'm really pleased with that. I was going to speak in support, but it's kind of obvious that we need to be dealing with this and we need to be getting on with it. And I know that most of the staff are fairly familiar with most of the steps that are being put together here. And really, it's only just a matter of adding a little bit of coordination. So thank you very much, and I do look forward to it being supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Ratcliffe, did you wish to make
Just very, very briefly, Chair, because I think it's all been said. And I think the mood of the meeting is to accept this motion, which I find very heartening. But as I think it was Greta Thunberg said about climate change, you know, the time for blah, blah, blah is over. The time for action is now. We have to stop sort of providing ourselves with excuses and just get on with it. All the legislation is in place as far as I can see. We have Environment Acts, we have the MPPF backing us. It's just the will, and I'm pleased to say that we are taking a positive way forward to add to the excellent work that we've been doing since 2019 on climate change. So, you know, let's get on with it.
Thank you. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a brilliant way to go, really. Climate change and biodiversity are very closely linked because climate change has done a lot of damage to natural nature, and we need to address both items. I'm pleased to say we've got a working group on climate change in this council and a working group on biodiversity. So I think we're going in the right direction. So I fully support this, and I fully support us going forward with our actions. We're one of the first to promise to be carbon free by 2030. So I think we could also do something with biodiversity to get certain steps as we go along in dates. So yes, I'm very good, and I support Matthew's motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. As has been spoken of before, you know, we were in the forefront of declaring a climate change emergency before a lot of other people did. So, you know, this is a really important issue, and I will be supporting the motion.
Is there anybody else who wishes to make any more comments on this? I would just like, I know it's not the norm, but from my point of view, obviously, when I read through it, I felt it's very, very, very interesting, and we are doing quite a lot. And I understand, after reading a bit more deeper and from the help of Councillor Buttle, of shedding a light onto another website as regards what was coming in, and the idea of the government making this a strategic situation that has to be a statutory duty that has to be done. So I commend for this, and I'm sure again the council now, hopefully we won't be going from the back, we are leading from the front again. So well done to that. Councillor Buckle, would you like to put anything else forward?
No. I'm very pleased to hear the support that we've got, and I'm delighted to get the support of everybody from people across the chamber. So thanks very much.
Thank you. So the motion has been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. Sorry. Was it not? Oh, sorry. So, Councillor, you abstained. Okay, thank you. That has been noted. Sorry, when we just see lots of hands. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right. Item 9, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. So that was the 24th of November 2022.
I'll move them, Chair.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Wakeman. Been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Yep, that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 10, appointment of Chairman and Vice Chairman of the Licensing Appeals Committee. I'll hand over to James for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've received notification from the Conservative and multiple councillors, I'll not name them all because members are familiar with that at the moment, that they intend to nominate Councillor Mark Wakeman as Chairman of the Licensing and Appeals Committee and Councillor Stuart Lees as Vice Chairman of the Licensing and Appeals Committee for the remainder of the current civic year. So, members, there is a matter that requires nomination formally on the floor tonight. So, if Chair, if you want to invite a member of that group to make those nominations, the Council can then vote on it. And the reason why is because there's been a change in the membership of the Conservative and Councillors Bright, Elliott, Salt and now Statham group, as Councillor Statham's status within the political party he represents has changed. So that's the reason why this has been brought forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, can I have somebody to propose the Chairman, please?
I propose on the item, Chair, as reason stated, Councillor Statham has resigned from the Conservative Party.
And seconder, Councillor Hobson. Thank you. All those in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? Yeah, that's carried, thank you. And also nominations as for the Vice.
Chair,
we're doing this together. Beg your pardon, sorry. Item 11. The Independent Ruminations Panel. Appointment of an additional member. Again, James.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this report was originally due to be considered on the 24th of November. Due to the level of business on that agenda, we didn't get to consider it. The report's fairly straightforward. It recommends an individual called Mr. Barry Mellor to be formally appointed as a member of the IRP panel for a 4-year term ending in what will now be January 2027 rather than November 2026. The background to Mr. Mellor is set out in the report. You will note from the report later on the agenda that Mr. Mellor did join the panel for their work in making recommendations to you this evening. That was because everything was working to a tight timescale in order for you to get the recommendations to you. So had we managed to consider that item on the 24th of November, Mr. Mellor would have been a formal part of the IRP. He sat with the IRP and subject to your agreement tonight, will be a formal member of that for the next 4 years. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Swindle.
I think that's a really good explanation, Chair, and I'm happy to move it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that find seconder? Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second it. Myself and James interviewed Mr. Mellor and he was an excellent candidate. Happy to have him on board.
So it's been proposed and seconded that Mr. Barry Mellor be formally appointed. All those in favour, please show. Against? And abstentions? This one. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Item 12, Corporate Plan 20 to 24, performances for 22-23 and priorities for the next 23-24 year. Thank you, Mr. Capes.
Thank you, Chairman. There's two parts to this report which also was brought to the 24th of November meeting before Christmas. The first part considers progress in the current year on your corporate plan, and it's fair to say that good progress has been made. All the targets are on track to be completed, if not on time, then soon after. And paragraph 2.4 and 2.5 mentions some of the work that's going on. There's particularly good work going on climate change and on recycling education as well. The second part of the report is about setting your target areas for 23-24, which is your final year of the current corporate plan. So the actions are all about completing the existing corporate plan. There's nothing new there. It's just actions to fulfil your existing pledges and aims. I think it's fair to say that because it was due to come in November and because officers have having to be planning budgets and so on for the coming financial year, we have been working to this already anyway. And it's also only right to point out that at the March budget meeting, we'll be coming with a bit more detail on some of these proposed target areas. But essentially, that's what they are, Chairman. It's finishing off the current corporate plan.
Thank you. No questions. Councillor Allison. Thank you, Chair. I was just reading through the proposed actions for, I think it's 2023 to 24, and looking at the promote greater recycling. And I wondered, is it possible that we could slightly expand that social media campaign that you're proposing to kind of promote the recycling to reuse and reduce as well? So it's not just about recycling, it's about having a bit more of an ambitious target around that. Thank you.
Chairman, without putting words into the waste and recycling team's mouth, I'm absolutely sure that they can do that, and certainly with Jim's help. So I'll certainly be happy to pass that on.
Thank you. Councillor Gamble. Question.
Yeah. Can I just ask why we've only got figures and what's been achieved to September? Is there anything coming later that we're going to get the post-September? Because obviously then come March, we're talking about sort of a whole half year.
Chairman, yeah, that's a good point. So this report came to Council in November, so it has got the first half year's figures in it. When we come in March, we'll have the first 9 months, the first 3 quarters of the year to put to you at that point. And then in July, because we don't let you get away with it, we'll come with the full year outturn later on. So we do come back a number of times during the year. But yes, you will be getting the first 3 quarters of the year in March.
Thank you.
Can I just ask what progress is being made on charging points in car parks?
No, sorry, we're not going to answer that one. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, again, democracy at work again, Derbyshire Dales.
Excuse me. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Sorry, those Chair. Why aren't we getting an answer on the charging points? That was going to be one of my questions. The targets on this go back to 21, but they're still around in March 2024. When are we likely to see some progress on this? And of course, these now include the provision for the ice cream concession sites. I have another very specific question, if I may put it forward, and this is
your question, please.
I think very relevant, is when are we likely to see the Ashbourne Airfield Master Plan?
Of order, can I have an explanation from the monitoring officer, please, why someone gets 3 questions and I get 1?
Members, I've written multiple times to you in my time at this authority. There are no rules on you being able to ask questions in debate at council meetings. It's at the chairman's discretion. Now, the practice here is that you do ask questions, but it is and always has been at the chairman's discretion. That might be something we want to look at for the new council. My preference would be that we applied the rules as they're written, because that's what keeps us safe procedurally. But it is at the chairman's discretion as to whether questions are put and the number of questions that are put, because you're here to debate at council. It's not a scrutiny committee. You're here to debate, and that's what the rules say. I know it's not necessarily the answer what members want to hear, but it is what the rules say. And
just for your clarity, Councillor Gamble, The reason why I stopped you on your next question, I want to try and give everybody the opportunity to ask questions instead of being numerous amounts from one person.
I had two questions. Councillor Ratcliffe has had 3 to date, and he's going to get them answered, I presume.
I don't believe he had 3 from that, I think.
But there was 3 answers.
Right,
Ashbourne
I'm not going
Airfield,
to carry on with
ice
any
cream,
more from this. If you
IV.
carry on, you'll have to leave the chambers. Sorry. Councillor Ratcliffe, Councillor, if you'd like to answer Councillor Ratcliffe's.
I think I'm keeping track of where we're at. I might be wrong, but in terms of the Ashbourne Airfield, the link road is shortly to be completed, and their planning applications are currently being considered, and in that process, master planning work is being progressed, but there is no date on that at the moment that I'm aware of. I can give the only update I can give on car parking, the only information I have on EV charging is that capital funding was approved by members at the November council meeting to do a feasibility study, but the results of that haven't finished. I'm not quite sure when that will be, but I will refer that back to colleagues.
Councillor Burford.
I'm not actually going to ask a question, I'm just going to make a point, if that's all right, that we often end up in this situation in council meetings, and as far as I can see, we've spent more time on telling Councillor Gamble why she can't ask another question than we have on answering the question.
Very good. Well, shall we just say something about this? As it was mentioned right at the very beginning, this was something that was held over from November. So in all that time, these questions could have been put forward long before then. We're just trying to get over this, and as Mr. Capes has said, we will be coming back in March for the next bit anyway, so the things added to it. We're just way behind because things aren't getting done. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, but that's no answer.
Well, it possibly isn't to yourself, but obviously we'll carry on disrupting and we'll end up having longer meetings. Thank you. Okay, so I'd like a proposer for this, please. Sorry, Councillor Fitter, you don't have a question. Sorry.
Yeah, I did, but I just want to make a point first on the report. And this is no reflection on our officers, but this is a report that I don't find very easy to read, very interesting, to be quite honest. And the reason for that is that when we talk about results, they're not really results, they're statements. And I would rather see something punchy that's telling us exactly what's going on. I'm going to support this, obviously, because this is an old report, and we're working off the old corporate plan. But my point is that we are looking at the moment in a new corporate plan, and I believe Councillor Hughes is also on that sounding board, so to speak. But the thing that, I had yesterday a very fruitful discussion with Mr. Alan Graham, who we all know, for an hour and a half, and I thought it was the most interesting discussion I've had in a long time. And one of the points I made was the corporate plan, and I would like to see something shorter, punchier, to the point. And the thing about what the biggest thing to me is, are we actually gauging what we want from a corporate plan in conjunction with our objectives, our aspirations against resources? And that was one of the biggest talking points I had with him yesterday. And, is that done now? Is it working that way in the future? Because what I don't want to see is long reports that really don't give you the flavour. And I know that Steve has to do them in a certain way, because that's how local government works. But if we could find a different way to put the information over to councillors and make it more punchy, tell us what's going wrong, why we're not achieving, and so we can take direct action and give our officers that support that they need. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And just respond on that briefly, Chair, and that's to agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Flitter. I think we'd all like to see it more punchy, more attractive, more user-friendly, and I'm happy to get his comments and other members' comments on that because I want to make it work for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like a proposer for this, recommendations in front for this. Thank you. Councillor Shirley. Hughes. Your second, Councillor Hughes. Do you want to make any comments?
Well, I think as in the nature of these things, I thought this is a very good report. And it did detail what has gone on and what is in progress. And I felt gave a pretty good understanding of where we were on a number of objectives. We do have a lot of objectives, but there are a lot of, the council has got so many different areas that it is pursuing. Inevitably there will be a lot of objectives covering a lot of all the different service areas, and it has to tie in with all the, I can't remember what they're called now, the detailed plans for each of the different areas. So there has to be, I think there's a golden thread, there has to be a series, a cascade of aims and objectives down to individual actions, and I think that's what Steve Capes is attempting to achieve in the report as it stands. So while I take Councillor Flitter's point, I think Mr. Capes is between a rock and a hard place, and I think what he's done is produce a very fair fist of what demonstrating what the council has achieved and what it needs to achieve in the near future. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say I think Steve's between the devil and the deep blue sea with regards information. I think it's an excellent report. As I say, it is a positive report. I was out with a resident this morning. I'd not actually looked, and I think Jim or Carl put on Facebook something from recycling information at Knifeton Primary School and the Waste Wednesday describing about the plastics that can be recycled. So we've got massive areas in this corporate plan. Take on board what Councillor Fitter said, but you've too much information, not enough information. It's very difficult, but thank you for all our officers involved.
It has been proposed and seconded. Is there anybody else who wishes to make a comment? No. With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Item 13, Local Council Tax Support Scheme. Karen, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report's asking members to do three things. To approve a local council tax reduction scheme or local council tax support scheme for 2023-24, the coming financial year. To set a budget for the council tax discretionary hardship scheme for 23-24, and to approve the proposed delivery of a council tax support fund, which is a new government scheme. Before I go through the report, I thought it might be helpful to give members a little bit of background about what the local council tax support scheme is. So it's a scheme that gives eligible households a reduction on their council tax bills, and those reductions are applied after other discounts, so such as the single person occupancy discount. In line with government guidance, the scheme is in two parts. One section has provisions for working age claimants and the other for pensioners. Under the scheme, eligible pensioner households receive 100% reduction, so they pay no council tax, and that was something the government insisted on at the start of the scheme. And households with working age claimants receive a discount of 91.5%. So they pay 8.5% of their bills. At the moment, there are around 3,150 council tax households that currently receive assistance towards their council tax bills, and that's roughly half and half between pensioner households and working age households. And that scheme at the moment, in this financial year, is forecast to cost us around £3.5 million to deliver.
The cost of the scheme is shared with the other major preceptors in line with precepts. So that means that the county council bears about 70% of the cost of the scheme, and the and the fire and police also share the costs. And those costs are taken into account when each of those bodies and we, the district council, set our own budgets and council tax. It forms part of the calculation of the council tax base. So that's a little bit of background so you understand the scheme. In this report, we're asking you to approve a new scheme for 23-24. That we have to approve a scheme for each financial year. But this scheme hasn't changed significantly from the scheme for the current financial year. It's been updated in line with government regulations and the circular from the Department for Work and Pensions. And these are just small changes that give an uplift to some of the allowances and the elements within the scheme. There are no significant technical changes required or proposed, and that's why consultation has not been required. Moving to the second part of the report on the discretionary hardship fund. This is in place because some council taxpayers face difficulties in making payments. So even though they might only have 8.5% of the bill to pay, for some households that is still a struggle. So we have in place the discretionary hardship fund, and that's intended to give more support to people in severe hardship fund. It can be used to reduce the bill, even to reduce it to zero, so that working age households also have no bill. Referrals are taken from the Citizens Advice Bureau and other partner agencies, and they tell us that this is really helpful for some of their clients. We're recommending that the discretionary hardship fund be increased from £18,000 this year to £20,000 next year. And if that amount should prove to be insufficient due to more applications as a result of the cost of living crisis, then I'll come back to council and let you know and seek more funding. The final part of the report addresses a new scheme that was announced by the government in the week before Christmas. And this is that there'll be £100 million across England for a council tax support fund. And that the way that scheme is intended to work is that households who are eligible for council tax support will be given an additional amount for 2023-24, and that will be funded by a government grant. The government, in working out their allocations to each council, expect councils to pass on at least £25 to each household, and then there will be some funds left over. At the moment, we're waiting for software to be installed to allow us to model the amounts that we can give to our residents. The government's made it clear that they don't expect residents to have to apply for this, and to keep it easy to administer, we don't want an application form and process either. Our aim is to increase the £25 as much as we can and distribute the funds in that manner, but we do need to keep back some of the funding to allow for severe hardship cases to be addressed, and also as a contingency in case we have new people coming onto CTS that weren't there at the beginning of the year. So I'm asking members to approve that approach to distributing the funding. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Swindle.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, Karen, whenever I get one of your reports, you always do such a brilliant brief before it. Every question in my head just gets ticked off and answered. But I've got one. One of my questions was about how people access this funding. And I know that because I've recommended people go to the Citizens Advice Bureau, and they will look at all the financial situation and then refer them on. there are people who I've spoken to before, they don't know about the Citizens Advice Bureau, they don't know that these support bodies are out there and they're struggling. And if they have had, they're pretty sure they've got the single occupancy discount and so on, can they come to the council themselves and apply? So, for example, if I met somebody, and I have in the past, who has serious financial difficulties and they are concerned about paying their council tax, but they don't want to go through the CAB, could a ward member, for example, give them a helping hand as to and point them in the right direction? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. As far as I know, most of the applications do come direct rather than through the Citizens Advice. So we've got a benefits team who can give advice over the phone. The formal application is a very lengthy form, and people can be assisted through that. There is also an online checker. That might be for housing benefit. But anyway, if you refer your residents to the benefits team, they'll be able to assist them.
Thank you. Councillor Fitter.
Yeah, I just want to echo Councillor Swindle's comments. This report written by Karen really doesn't leave the questions there to be answered, because I think it covers it all. But I suddenly thought that, you know, is 20,000 enough? But as Karen said last year, if it isn't enough, she will come back to the council and we look at it again. And I think that's a very sensible way forward. The one question I do have is the new software that you need to get the calculations for this. What's the cost of that, and where does the funding come from?
I believe the cost is relatively low. I'm not sure I can say it in a public meeting, but there is a government grant, a new burdens grant, that's supposed to cover administrative costs. So that will fund it.
That answers it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gamble.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just ask one question then. And all it really was just, as I said, most of the answer to everything is in this report. I was just out of interest, really, sort of how things had gone, say, in the last quarter, because I know it's when a lot of people's bills and everything has gone up. Have you noticed an uptick on the discretion reform in the last quarter, and is that what you've sort of based the 20,000 on?
The £20,000 was the benefits manager's recommendation. He is the one that sees the applications coming in, rather than me. So I'm sorry, but I don't have the detail that you're particularly asking for, but I can get it for you.
Oh, well, just out of interest, really. Thank you.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I have no questions. If you'll allow me, I'll move that we accept this report.
Come back to you then. Councillor
Okay.
Slack, have you got a question?
Sorry. Karen, you mentioned housing benefits. I know it's a different department, but can you work some of the housing benefit calculations come in to help you in any way?
The housing benefits are calculated by the same team that do council tax support, because often it's similar information. So I think if they get an application for one, they usually see if it's relevant for the other.
Makes sense, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Ratcliffe, I'll come back to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, the three recommendations, I think, are extremely necessary, of course, because of the financial climate that many families are facing. The numbers that have been mentioned by Karen, who are dependent on this sort of provision, are quite significant, and we have to do all we can to provide that support and help. I was the seconder for the proposal many, many years ago by the late Councillor Lewis Rose that established the discretionary hardship fund. If I remember rightly, it was something like £11,000 at the time. So it's increased almost year on year by some 80% and may even see further increases, as Karen has quite rightly set out. So I think it's one of the jewels, if you like, in the crown that underpins some of the ethical values that this council still tries to maintain and promote. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to get behind this and provide the encouragement and support to Paul Radcliffe and his team for everything they do for those suffering from financial hardship in these fraught economic times. Thank you.
Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, can I thank Karen for excellent report as usual, and I'm quite happy to second the report. Thank you.
It's been proposed and seconded. Is there anybody else who wants to make any comments? And I'd like to go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. That's passed, carried. Thank you. Item 14, refugees and displaced people. Rob, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report brings together the different strands of public policy on refugees and asylum seekers as it relates to the Council. There are different government-funded programmes that relate to each of the different groups outlined in the report. Some require significant involvement from the Council and others less so. When I started developing this report in October last year, I was only intending to seek approval to spend the County Council grant of £413,000. However, since then, much has changed in relation to asylum seekers and the Homes for Ukraine scheme. The Homes for Ukraine scheme was announced the day before we broke up for Christmas, so you can imagine we've not had a great deal of time to get the report ready for you. I appreciate it can often be easy to mix up the different terms involved. People do move in and out of using the words refugee and asylum seeker, and they often get mixed up, but hopefully in the report I've set out the difference between the two. Simon is here as well to talk about the issues relating to the local authority grant work that we've had in terms of the revenue side of things, and I'll introduce the capital side to the Local Authority Housing Fund. I've said in the report that the Local Authority Housing Fund is a challenging programme that provides the opportunity to deliver new social housing. 17 are for Ukrainian refugees and 1 is for an Afghan family. Our approach is designed to focus on the purchase of properties from within the private sector rather than repurpose existing social housing. We're trying to achieve a balance between meeting the requirements of the fund whilst not reducing the opportunity for people on the housing register to access social housing stock. The urgency within the report and the government timeline reflects the pressures within the refugee and asylum system, with 46,000 asylum seekers in temporary accommodation, 23,000 Afghan families who worked alongside the UK in Afghanistan and who have since fled to the UK, and 150,000 Ukrainians welcomed into homes and communities across the country. So every local authority is expected to respond to the various programmes, recognising at the same time the cost of living crisis, which we've just been discussing partly, and the need from our own residents. The Local Authority Housing Fund was allocated to 187 councils who each received a share of the £500 million. Only 14 councils in the East Midlands received an allocation, and Derbyshire Dales, it seems, has one of the highest allocations. The homes provided through this scheme will become available to the housing register once the demand from the Ukrainian cohort has diminished. Obviously, we don't know when that might be, but that is the long-term ambition of the government's funding. The validation format attached to Appendix 1 was submitted yesterday with some minor changes in order to meet the government deadline to indicate our interest in the fund. If members approve the recommendations in the report, then work will start to deliver the programme over the coming months, with properties needing to be legals by November and completion by March 24. So that's a challenging timeline in order to deliver the number of homes required. So I'll pass over to Simon now to talk about the revenue side of things.
Thank you, Rob. Again, just as a bit of a background, really, so people can understand sort of numbers and why we want to spend some of the money. As the report sets out, there are currently 120, or there have been over 120 Ukraine families settled in the Derbyshire Dales, and that's over 300 Ukraine refugees in total. And that's the largest number of Ukraine refugees of any local authority in Derbyshire. To enable us to sort of assist that situation, we need to resource the team better in terms of looking at those families, looking at when those families are going to leave those host arrangements. Some of those host arrangements have already broken down. We've already had some approaches under homelessness. We've already done a lot of work with the county rematching a lot of those families back with other host families, which is what this scheme is generally there to do. But the Ukrainians who have come under this scheme, the Homes for Ukraine, have arrived under the extension scheme, which allows them to work, to claim benefits and to apply for housing and to come to us under homelessness. So we've set out some of the financials in terms of that. So we've got, the county have received a pot of money for each person settled in the county, and we've negotiated with the county some of that money back to assist us in our housing function that we need to do with some of these households. And again, that table is quite sort of explicit in the quite telling within the report as to where those households are currently settled, and obviously some of those placements and where those people have gained strong connections with schools, with work, etc., is going to prove us some difficulty in resettling people within the areas that they want to remain. So we want to introduce another support worker to the team who, again, will be able to triage families and look at support where they need to be sort of relocated or whether they can stay, and how we can support them in terms of the type of accommodation that they will access. We need to look at the private rented sector and look at private rented strategy. Again, a lot of Ukraine households coming to us and asking us how they can access the private rented sector. A lot have not got credit footprints and don't have access into that accommodation because they can't get guarantors. So again, we're looking at setting up a guarantor scheme, rent in advance. So there's lots of work that we can do around that. And also we need to put some money aside in terms of homelessness. We already have had one placement into bed and breakfast, which cost the authority £4,100, whilst that person was waiting to be placed with another household. Again, a statutory function if somebody hasn't got accommodation that we need to pick up. We want to do a lot of work with the voluntary sector. There's a lot of good work out there in terms of voluntary organisations supporting people. We want to bring all that work together as well. So this post will aid us in doing that. We do need a contingency. We don't know how long this is going to continue for. We don't know how quickly we're going to be able to settle these households. We have, as we've stated, over 120 households in the Derbyshire Dales that we didn't have last year. None of us wanted this to happen, but we've now got this group of people that we need support, which also we don't want to impact on the housing register as it stands. We're still getting other people joining the housing register. We've still got the standard numbers of homelessness walking through our door. Cost of living crisis is already explained. So there's lots of pressures on there as well. So we're grateful that we've got this money, and we've set out how we feel that we're going to need to spend this in the coming year to 2 years.
Happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. My understanding was that we tried to extract more monies out of county. You said about negotiations. Have those negotiations started yet?
Shall I take that one? Yeah. I think we were one of the councils working with our colleagues at county to explain how a housing authority would spend any allocation. And in credit to Simon, when he came up with some proposals, most of the other councils in the county adopted the ideas that we came up with. So we've put that to county. They've not balked at that. They've responded positively. It's very much a collaborative project with them. And I'm sure if we suddenly found we had spent all the money, for example, we went back, I'm sure they would be open to working with us again.
Councillor Archer, question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd be more than happy to move this when the time comes, but just a very quick question. on a technical point, really. On point 7.4, it mentions that the council is expected to submit proposals for how we would use the funding by the 25th of January. So I'm just conscious of the fact we're now on the 26th of January. So just a quick check on that in terms of have we done that, or will we wait until after this meeting, and have we had to wait, and just to make sure that's all okay, really.
Yes, thank you. So I did submit that yesterday. If members had violently disagreed with it, it wasn't the end of the day, because it's the MOU that we need to sign that is the binding document. So if there were any amendments, the key really was that in submitting it yesterday, it gives us time to receive money in this financial year, so we can start early rather than sign it later and then receive the money in the next financial year, and we'd already be behind, as it were.
Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chair. I just want some clarification on 7.5 in the report, paragraph 7.5. So are you looking to use Section 106 monies as match funding for the shortfall in what this has been allocated to us from our, central government for what is a national scheme? Thank you.
Yes, it is 106 funding. The government are quite clear about the different sources that we can use. So a range for borrowing. We can't use right to buy receipts. We can't use Homes England grant. But we are expected to come up with our own resources. And to be fair, the only resources we have of this magnitude is our 106 contributions from private developments.
So if I can just come back on that. So that's money that has been given to us as a district from developers to fund social housing for our residents?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Ratcliffe, question? Okay, thank you. Councillor Slack, question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Rob and Simon for all the work they do, first off. My question is really, in my ward at Middleton, there's a gentleman taking in a full family, a mum, dad and 2 boys. They don't speak very little English. They're struggling to, it's a big problem. And they're very, very shell-shocked from where they came. The village they came from has been completely flattened, and there's no chance of them going back. They have applied for housing recently, and hopefully they will get them. But my question is, Rob, you spoke about acquiring private properties. Is that what sort of private property would you be looking to provide?
Yes. So at the moment there are limited options available to us in terms of procuring accommodation. So Simon and I are enjoying a lot of time on Rightmove, looking for different properties, I must admit. If there was a scheme of private development properties about to complete, we would be having discussions, trying to buy maybe 10 or a dozen houses at one time. But that isn't the case at the moment. There are very few properties actually finishing at the moment. The report sets out the kind of price point we're working to as well. So Karen would tell me, I'm sure, if we spent a lot more money than the sort of average we were aiming to achieve. So a lot of 60% is a lot of money when you add it all up across the programme. So we're looking for smaller, lower cost properties. The grant is based on the lower quartile house prices in the district. That's what the government used as one of their indicators in order to, so that they're really pointing us towards the lower end of the private market, as it were. So we've mapped out, as you can see in the report, the profile of the households we're trying to support. So the clever part comes matching that by location and the availability of housing at that time over the next 10, 11 months. Yeah. So that's why I've said in the report it's not easy, and we may end up having to give some of this money back because we physically can't deliver. So I think members need to be aware that might be the case, but we'll do our best to deliver what we can.
Can I just come back on one question? You mentioned about lower end of the market. Recently, we've seen many reports with social housing and private rented housing that substandard conditions with mould and damp, and I do hope we don't put them in them sort of dwellings, because we need to. There's a big programme really to get around all them and repair them, obviously. So that's a big problem, isn't it, really?
If I could reassure you, Councillor Slack, we're trying to do this under the same umbrella as our existing council housing programme, and in that commitment we've made, we would try to achieve an EPC-B on all retrofit properties, and we've managed to do that so far. There is an element of the grant that does pay for renovation costs as well as our costs in the acquisition process. So, yeah, none of us would want to put a family into a property that wasn't fit